There's a surge of optimism in rural America following the election. Many farmers feeling like things are going to turn around. Yet economists warn many conditions point to a weakening farm economy.
Corn prices have tumbled, soybean prices have tumbled.
Straight ahead, we take a look at current economic conditions that appear to be sticking around for a while. Plus, the Farm Bill expired 2 months ago, and we'll explain why Congress needs to act in the next few weeks to avoid disaster. It's time to grow. The clock is ticking for Congress to act before the Farm Bill falls off the cliff. Thanks for joining us on NTV News. I'm Steve White. That massive piece of legislation has already expired, and now that the calendar hits December, farmers call on Congress to get something done before things get even worse. Input costs remain elevated while farmers are getting paid less for their crops.
Corn prices have tumbled, soybean prices have tumbled.
From the farm to the nation's capital, the cry is growing louder to do something about the Farm Bill. There are two options: pass a new 5-year package, but there's little time for that. So really, the only choice farmers see is a stopgap.
Everything I've seen is it's going to be an extension for sure. They're going to go ahead and punt it till next year once Congress gets reseated and everything shakes out.
The massive package has already expired, but if nothing's done by year's end, Depression-era laws kick in.
The first shoe to drop would be the dairy cliff that starts at the beginning of the year, where USDA has to support dairy farm and milk prices.
The government could be forced to spend billions to buy dairy products, which would see prices in restaurants and store shelves skyrocket. An unthinkable scenario.
Congress agrees that we need to get an extension done to avoid what would be a pretty disruptive scenario if you had USDA supporting milk prices at these very lofty levels. So I think we're going to get something done.
Veteran ag economist John Newton worked on Capitol Hill before joining Terrain. He says Congress has 3 weeks to act. The question is how long to extend the current bill. Then those in ag would like to see serious efforts to get a new package done.
This is a $1.4 trillion farm bill.
Yeah.
The last time we did the farm bill, it cost $867 billion over 10 years. 80% of the farm bill is nutrition, like you said. So obviously there are conversations around the nutrition program, any enhancements that can be done there. But with a $1 trillion price tag, that gets tricky.
Farmers would like to see crop insurance more affordable while making improvements to conservation programs and income support that reflect the challenges of 2025, which are different than the way the world looked when the last bill passed. So in the short term, farmers would like to see a decision about current programs, but then get quickly back to work.
Congress has a job to do moving forward and getting a new farm bill done.
And this discussion about the Farm Bill doesn't happen in a vacuum, as margins remain tight. The USDA's latest income report shows crop farmers experienced 2 years of declining cash receipts, falling from an inflation-adjusted value of $300 billion in 2022 to $246 billion this year. Margins are tight and may be below break-even. The USDA's cost of production forecast gives us some insights, and economists expect costs to remain elevated but down slightly. That includes higher costs for seed, chemicals, custom operations, repair, maintenance, and taxes, while inputs like fertilizer, fuel, and interest rates are trending down. So the cost to produce an acre of corn and soybeans may be down just slightly. Of course, those are national estimates, and we don't know what it means for an individual operation. John Newton at Terrain suggests multiple levers to control costs, scaling back on machinery purchases, attempting to negotiate lower rental rates for cropland, sharpening the pencil on fertilizers and chemicals, potentially restructuring or consolidating debt, selling land or equipment to increase working capital. Here's more now from economist John Newton at Terrain.
Crop farmers in particular have faced pretty tough margins and prices below break even. It's likely in 2025 that it's going to be more of the same. USDA has already come out with price projections that show prices even lower next year than what they are today. Input costs are going to remain elevated. in 2025. I mean, you have to have big yields this year to offset the price declines that we've seen. Corn prices have tumbled, soybean prices have tumbled. If you go south of you, cotton prices have tumbled dramatically. About the only sector of ag that's doing fairly well would be the cattle sector, cow-calf producers, cattle producers, but their ability to capitalize on this market that we have today is limited. The cost of credit could be a barrier for some because of given where interest rates are today. So there are a lot of challenges in the farm economy.
In the meantime, though, that extension, I mean, you mentioned stuff like that dairy cliff, but I can't imagine a world where that actually comes to pass. I mean, that's kind of that sword of Damocles hanging over you. They're going to get something done in the next 3 weeks. I mean, they really don't have a choice, do they?
I think they'll absolutely get something done over the next 3 weeks. And I think folks also have to remember that the Secretary of Ag has a lot of discretion in how these programs are implemented. You get into January, there's a transition that will be underway with a new secretary that needs to get confirmed. So none of these things are going to happen overnight if we do, unfortunately, get to that scenario. But I think Congress agrees that we need to get an extension done to avoid what would be a pretty disruptive scenario if you had USDA supporting milk prices at these very lofty levels. So I think we're going to get something done. How long it lasts, I don't know, but I'm certain that it will give farmers the certainty that they need to go in next spring, work with their lenders. Here's what the risk management tools that we have today look like. And then Congress has a job to do moving forward and getting a new farm bill done.
The American Farm Bureau Federation taking a look at the latest numbers. Farm Bureau economists say the December numbers do little to alleviate concerns about the financial pressures farmers face heading into 2025. It paints a tough picture for crop producers and underscores agriculture remains in the red with few signs of immediate relief. Now, amidst the gloom, livestock remains a bright spot. Total receipts up 8%. Cattle and calf receipts are strong, plus dairy and pork producers have seen good numbers as well. Meanwhile, optimism soars in rural America following the election. Purdue University tracks farmer sentiment with its economy barometer, which is climbing dramatically, the highest level of optimism since 2021. The survey was taken the week after the November election. 34% of farmers anticipate good times in the next year, double the percent from the previous month. And when farmers are asked to project 5 years into the future, more than half predict widespread prosperity for American agriculture, showing growing confidence. The Purdue survey shows farmers expect a more relaxed landscape when it comes to government red tape under a Trump administration. However, farmers are also expressing concern about a trade war. 42% of those surveyed believe a trade war is likely or very likely. A Trump administration less likely to promote electric vehicles, but what does it mean for corn-based ethanol? President Biden led the push for electric vehicles, and there are now millions on the road. President-elect Donald Trump, though, says he will roll back EV mandates. Meanwhile, supporters of ethanol have long positioned themselves as a climate-friendly alternative. Ethanol gets a boost from the Renewable Fuel Standard, a program administered by the EPA. Trump has picked Lee Zeldin to lead the agency, while in Congress, Zeldin signed onto multiple letters questioning ethanol policy. Nebraska Senator Pete Ricketts says he asked the nominee where he stands.
Lee talked about his past, and I actually asked him directly about his past opposition to biofuels, and he responded with, hey, I am for biofuels now. He also reiterated that President Trump supports biofuels.
Nebraska corn growers praised Trump for his support of higher ethanol blends, but his administration also granted waivers that frustrated the biofuels industry.
The small refinery exemptions were a huge problem for us during the Trump administration, and hopefully a second Trump administration we can address that.
Ultimately, Ricketts backed Zeldin for EPA as someone who aligns with the conservative push to eliminate government red tape.
I've talked about the EV mandate already, right? That's a regulation that needs to be rolled back. The Clean Power Plan, again, is going to impact Nebraska directly. We need to, whether it's going to impact us directly now or in the future, the good neighbor rule is another one that's going to be problematic.
Farmers also curious to see who the president will pick to be part of his trade team, given President-elect Trump's position on increasing tariffs. The state's largest farm group gathering in Kearney this week. But before that, Nebraska Farm Bureau President Mark McHargue recently traveling to the UK.
We had the opportunity to get onto some farms over there. Went to Clarkson Farm, Jeremy Clarkson, who's a big
Top Gear.
Yeah, Top Gear, big personality. He's running a farm now. Spent about a half a day with him. Talking about the regulatory environment over there in the UK. And so one of the things that I came back from there is just that we don't want to be them, quite frankly. We have the ability to produce in a way that we can produce at both environmentally, but at really high production. And they're kind of shrinking back from production, just produce to the bare minimum, and that's not who we are around here. And so, I really committed me to really making sure that we stay focused on production agriculture, whatever that takes, because we can do both and/or.
Okay. Still to come, we head to Popcorn County, USA, and later, Kyle brings us a look at the drought monitor. Visiting with Justin Brook, CEO of Maya America. You were telling me you were farming in Ukraine, harvest crews were running hard, and you couldn't find a head that you liked, and tell me the story.
Yeah, so the story is in 2008, I went to Ukraine to set up a farm for an investment group. I ended up spending 7 years farming in Ukraine, most of it in western Ukraine over by the Polish border. Farmed about 135,000 acres and grew about 30,000 acres of corn on an annual basis. And I went through 8 corn heads the first year of a competitor corn head. I don't need to use the name. And I went through 8 of the next year of another group. And I was just not happy with the performance, the amount of corn on the ground, and the breakdowns in the maintenance. And granted, I had 30,000 acres of corn, and I would not classify as the greatest corn combine drivers. So I found Maya in Spain, and I called Luis, who's the owner of the factory that's over here in Nebraska today visiting us, and I said, I'm looking for a better corn head that'll stand up through tough conditions. And he said, if you buy a Maya corn head, it'll have a 3-year unlimited acre warranty. And I said, let me back up, because I said, I have 30,000 acres of corn, and
you're saying this is too good to be true.
I said, and I'm going to pick corn until realistically the 10th to the 15th of January, the ground's going to be frozen and it's going to be tough conditions. And he said, if it leaves my factory and it's not good enough to have a 3-year warranty, then I don't want to put my name on it. So it's a 3-year unlimited acre warranty. I said, okay. So this was on, I believe, a Monday. I called my oldest brother from Emmitsburg, Iowa, up in northwest Iowa, that I farm with today as a partnership. And I told my brother Lance, and he was running a green one and a red one for corn heads. And he said, I'll meet you there. What day are you going? I said, Thursday. Now I'm in Ukraine, and it's a 2-hour flight for me. So he flew from northwest Iowa, flew over there. We went and visited the factory, spent 2 days with Luis, his brother, his dad. They started building corn heads in 1975. His dad started in the garage, and they built their business from there, and it was predominantly in Spain. And so by the time I left the factory, we bought an 8-row corn head, had them ship it to Iowa.
Okay.
And we said, we're going to run it side by side, our other corn heads, we're going to see how it compares. And by the end of the year, I went back to Luis and I said, can I set up the North American distribution for these, because they're fantastic. And
you didn't just want more of them, you wanted to sell them all.
I went at this from a pure farmer's perspective, because that's what we are, that's what we do.
Right.
And I went at it as, hey, I want a better piece of equipment to go in front of a combine that leaves less corn in the field, stands up better, does a better job chopping, and fits my needs. And ultimately what came out of it was, I want to sell these across North America, because I don't want to be the only one to have this, because I think there's a real opportunity here. And so that was in 2013, and we have been growing steadily ever since for what we're going into our 12th year here of building that business. So
Kyle's in next with our Grow Weather Outlook.
Well, the drought monitor this past week that was released Thursday morning, as you can imagine, with very little precipitation we've had the last week, if really any at all. Still pretty dry here across Nebraska and Kansas. In fact, not a whole lot changing. It actually did improve a little bit in the state of Kansas, but take a closer look there now. No drought now stands about 31.25%. Abnormally dry, about 68.75%. Both of those categories about a 0.75% improvement compared to last week's report. Moderate drought now stands about 29% of the state, a 2.25% improvement compared to the week prior. So still no severe, extreme, or exceptional drought across Kansas. Very good signs there. Unfortunately, a little bit worse moving up north to Nebraska. Now no drought, just 6.14%. In fact, all these categories are really the same as last week. Abnormally dry still stands about 94%. Moderate drought still at about 83.75%. We got severe drought now at about 44%. And extreme drought now stands roughly 8.31% to be exact, but still no exceptional drought here across Nebraska, although northwestern parts of the state could certainly use the most precipitation. Of course, we all do in Nebraska. Temperatures for December, the latest ones we have, they're actually updated about a week ago. Still expecting relatively above average temperatures for really almost all of Nebraska and all of Kansas. More average temperatures, though, expected for the eastern parts of both states. Precipitation-wise, still expecting relatively average precipitation totals for the rest of the month, although we'll see later this week, not much for precipitation. Next 3 months, this remains unchanged compared to the week prior. And again, we got pretty normal temperatures for the next 3 months. Maybe the northern sliver there of Nebraska slightly below average. Otherwise, next 3 months precipitation-wise, looking at relatively average precipitation totals minus the southwestern part of Kansas. So a look at your Grow Almanac here for the week ahead. Normally see a high right around 40, normal lows right around 20. We're a little bit warmer in both categories for this next week. 44 your week ahead average high, and then 24 your week ahead average low. So it certainly could be worse, although we do have a couple of colder days mixed in starting off the week. Relatively normal, although we do see another blast of cold air come in for Tuesday and Wednesday. May have to monitor that flurry chance both days. Otherwise, looks dry really the rest of this week. Not much for precipitation really at all. Good news is do get a little bit warm by Thursday into Friday. Again, could see a fair amount of sunshine with some clouds mixed in too. Your Grow proverb here for the week: December changeable and mild, the whole winter will remain a child. I guess we've got that going on with those temperatures constantly changing over the course of this next week. Of course, this last week was like that too, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see if winter will indeed remain a child. So that is a look at your Grow Weather Report. Stay tuned next week when once again it'll be time to grow.
Firearm deer harvests are down this year, but the state is working to return the numbers to healthy levels. Coming up, how the Nebraska deer population is making a comeback. I'm Emily Kieran Axtell. The state deer population has been at worryingly low numbers for some time. The Nebraska Game and Parks Commission say they have a plan to build the numbers back up, but it's going to be a balancing act between deer and humans. According to the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission, firearm deer harvests are down compared to last year. This is tied to the larger problem the state has been having with its white-tailed deer and mule deer populations.
Looking at our deer populations from like that 30,000 foot view, we're definitely below where we want to be.
The populations have been in decline due to a combination of drought, poor habitat conditions, and hunting. One way the Game and Parks Commission has been addressing the issue has been to lower the amount of yearly permits for hunting. In 2020, 143,000 permits were issued. This year, that number's dropped by almost 25%, with only 110,000 permits issued so far.
This was an anomaly and a big step for us to reduce permits as much as we have.
Although a bold move, the permit strategy seems to be working. Last year, the firearms season success rate was 38%. This year, it's ticked up slightly to 40%. As the population bounces back, though, the Game and Parks Commission is watching to make sure that the numbers don't become too high. Previously, when the deer population was too high, it led to unwanted interactions between human and deer.
It was largely agricultural damage, a lot of corn damage, damage in fields like that.
According to the Game and Parks Commission, when Nebraska was overpopulated with deer around 7 years ago, deer damaged crops, got into livestock feeds, and were generally a nuisance to agriculture. They're working on ways of avoiding that problem.
We have a depredation program now that we've started here 4 or 5 years ago, kind of as a result of those damage issues that we saw. So hopefully we can work with landowners and kind of mitigate some of that damage.
The Game and Parks Commission hopes for a recovery in the next 5 years. In the meantime, they advise that those with permits can enjoy their hunts as usual, although they may need to take extra care in scouting locations. Emma Leek, NTV News.
And as we close, make sure to stop and say hi if you see us at the Cattlemen and Farm Bureau conventions, and of course all the other winter meetings coming up. And we'll see you back here again next time as we see how agriculture makes Nebraska grow.